Hello, everybody. Today's update, we're going to go live to Italy, where our colleague Eugenio is attending the Huawei Ecoconnect event 2018. And we want to hear from Eugenio how things are going over there. Hi, Eugenio.
Hi, Knud.
Good to see you.
Good here. Everything is good here. As you can see, I'm live outside Nuvola Convention Center, which is the location where the Huawei Ecoconnect 2018 has been held. Everything is good here. Weather is maybe not as good as it was yesterday, a bit cloudy today, but still warmer than in Germany.
Yeah, exactly. Certainly better in Italy. Let's have a quick chat about four things. The first thing that I want to talk about with you is Huawei. Generally, how are you perceiving the company and the positioning? Second thing we want to talk about is 5G, hot topic right now. Then let's talk about some of the insights that you've found at the conference on different verticals like smart city, and maybe some of the other things as a fourth point that we have. So let's dive straight in. How is Huawei positioning themselves, especially given the negative media the company has had recently and some accusations of actually spying and everything? I'm just curious what you're finding, how the company is taking that and what they're doing.
Yes, sure. So, first of all, let me give you an overview of what the conference was about, and that will give you also an idea of what's Huawei's positioning within the whole context. So, the main theme here was about the digital transformation of society. Of course, being this event hosted in Europe, it was mostly focused on their European strategy. They've been, doing a lot of partnerships here in Europe. So they have been investing a lot of money in research and development. So they were claiming something like 1,600 partnerships and spent about 63 million euros in research and development in 2017. There are several technical collaboration projects, about 200 plus of these projects currently running. So, they're pretty active here in Europe. Mentioning your negative media and spying accusations, I didn't get into the topic, but it seems like something that it doesn't bother them too much. The global market is pretty wide, and I think these things are mostly coming from English-speaking countries, the US, Australia, and so on. But I didn't really have a feeling that this was a main issue for them here. In terms of positioning, so we were talking about digital transformation, and what does that mean? Digital transformation is about digitalizing all the processes and the services in enterprises, institutions, even for consumers. And Huawei has shown that they're covering lots of layers of the technological stack to achieve the digital transformation. Starting from the edge, they are producing the chipsets for the devices, the light operative system. They are involved with lots of network communication technologies, the cellular technologies, the new low power weather and network technologies, and IoT, for example. They are pretty much involved with 5G research and development. And also with communication between vehicles and infrastructure, so for this connected car kind of topic. They also have a lot on infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, so for private and public cloud services, for data centers, storage. And on top of that, they also have lots of involvement with IoT platform. They have the Ocean Connect IoT platform, which provides lots of services that stay on top of this cloud. So in terms of positioning, they seem to be covering pretty much everything, and they have lots of partnership with many companies that provide what they don't. So specifically the applications on top of their infrastructure, but also the smart devices. And there were like a few companies here showcasing like the smart meters and sensors based on Huawei chipsets connecting to, for example, NB-IoT. So I think they're pretty well positioned in this context.
I have a question for you on 5G. I mean, we're seeing that quite a lot of acceleration in the market of companies advancing 5G. We saw some of the 5G for consumer networks already launched in the US, or at least something similar to that. I'm just curious what you're getting from Huawei, maybe also the Chinese perspective, what you're learning on their take on 5G and how they're approaching the whole thing.
Yes, I mean, you're right. So 5G is already been launched in a few countries, but 5G is a wide topic. We have to distinguish between these early deployments, which are focused on the so-called fixed wireless access. This is what is happening, for example, in the US with Verizon and AT&T, basically providing broadband access through 5G, let's say, base stations to provide high speed in areas that have not fiber infrastructure. These are just the early deployments. So they are just motivated by the need for high data rates, or at least the intention to provide these high data rates, because in terms of the actual need from the consumer side, my opinion, I mean, with 4G, there is enough speed and bandwidth for the services that are being used by consumers right now. Of course, these 5G early implementations, they may be the starters for some more advanced applications. Like, for example, today I visited this 5G truck. It's some kind of like demo exhibit that they have here. Maybe I can also show you the truck if, wait a second. Yeah. So you can see the truck down there is basically a setup for VR applications. So there is this drone which has 360-degree cameras, and from inside the truck, you can see basically what the drone is seeing through a VR handset. The drone is connected to a, let's call it a small 5G base station. Of course, this is probably not using like the full 5G standard. It's just, the technologies that are envisioned to be standardized for 5G. But it's a pretty good example of, one of the first applications that 5G will enable. Going forward, of course, 5G is going to be a key driver for other kind of applications, specifically in the manufacturing industry and the automotive industry. And this is what was mostly presented here at the Huawei conference. So they are very much focused on the manufacturing industry, where the need for low latency communication is one of the main drivers for the deployment of 5G. To improve the speed of operations within the factory, for example, for robotics, in order to have like this control with very low latency. We are talking about 1 millisecond latencies and even lower. And the same also for automotive, which seems to be the other main let's say, segment that is pushing the development of 5G, specifically the connected car environment, to have not only infotainment in the car, but also to enable communication between the cars and the road infrastructure. For example, to provide information about traffic situation, or just to provide control and assisted driving in the future. And there are lots of trials currently happening in the world where Huawei is involved. Of course, many of these trials are still in Asia, but there are many also like in other parts of the world. They specified, like for example in Germany, there are a few trials like that. So I'd say, this manufacturing and automotive seems to be the two main industries that are like driving the growth of 5G beyond these fixed wireless access deployments.
Yeah, I think you quickly lost your 5G network there because you were a little bit your connection was a little bit broken. So maybe you need to get that drone flying closer to you again. But very quickly, if I may ask, did they have a setup for this manufacturing? Did they show anything? Because I mean, the connected car and 5G, I think, is a much talked about case, and that makes a lot of sense. And like you said, you know, there's a lot of different cases around the connected car. But just curious, did they say? I mean, you mentioned robotics, but did they have any setups there around robotics or anything like that?
No, they don't have any setups. Mostly just screens showing what they are doing within that context. So there were like a few presentations on smart manufacturing, on wireless connectivity in factories, predictive maintenance, these kind of things, but nothing that shows like how, you know, in practice they are achieving. Kind of,
I'm asking because I mean, in the factory, 5G clearly competes with existing cables and other standards, and whereas in connected car you don't really have that. So I'm just curious if they, you know, I find it a lot harder for 5G to get into the factory setting than it is for 5G to get in the drone or connected car, where there's a clear need for this kind of high bandwidth, low latency communication. But I would say let's move on. What other insights or other things did you find interesting at the conference that we haven't discussed yet?
So there were like a few interesting, let's say, demos, and for example, there was this interesting application of smart meters. So basically, just to give you like a quick summary of the thing, there is this company, Knud. It's a German company. They have retrofitted analog meters, energy meters, through to make them digital through the use of a so-called energy cam. So they basically stick this camera to the smart meter, and this camera can read the values of the meter. And through OCR, it can like digitalize these values and send them via NB-IoT to an IoT platform, where, of course, the utilities can have a much better visibility of the whole thing. This seemed to me one of the most interesting applications that I've seen so far.
It's kind of like a cheap retrofit in a way.
Exactly, because the advantage of this is that you don't need to change your metering infrastructure. You just have to update it through this solution. It costs less, and it's like much more quickly to deploy compared to changing the whole smart metering infrastructure. They already have it installed at the airport in Munich, where they seem to be working pretty well. And they had just an example of the setup. So there is like this camera, which is like very small, attached to the meter, and then it's connected to an NB-IoT, let's call it like little gateway, or the device that transmits the signals to the NB-IoT network, which, by the way, they use in the Telefonica Germany NB-IoT network at the airport of Munich. So that was another interesting thing, because I did not know Telefonica had an NB-IoT network set up there, but good to know that.
Very good. Anything else? We should probably come to a wrap up here.
Well, another interesting thing, Huawei has launched this mobile, how did they call it? Well, basically, it's like a little mobile computer for the cars, which will allow this high processing and low latency applications for this vehicle to infrastructure communication. So this is like something that they've been highlighting since day one, and that seemed to me like pretty interesting. Then what else? I mean, I did enjoy this 5G demo simply because it was the first one that I had the chance to see live, and then what else? nothing else to highlight. For the rest, it was mainly like partners showing, what they've been doing in different verticals with, smart grid, manufacturing, smart offices, some also financial services using Huawei's products and services. And yes, and also I also want to mention, how Huawei seem pretty active also not just on industry and automotive, but also in smart cities. It's a very important vertical for them. They have this intelligent operations center, which is basically an IoT platform to manage different city services. And one interesting demo that I saw was from this company called Hexagon Geospatial. They basically provide like this kind of three-dimensional maps of cities, on top of which they can implement sensors, reading from sensors spread all around the city, so that a city manager can see, for example, which light bulbs are working properly, which ones are not. He can set up like public works to go and fix these things. And this is basically technology agnostic, so you can use it with any kind of application for lighting, parking, waste management, for security. So there was an interesting look at how this combination of technologies is going to facilitate the life for city managers. And that was another thing that I found pretty interesting.
Very good, very interesting. Thanks for sharing those insights, Eugenio. So yeah, thank you. Have some safe travels back, and I would say see you soon.
Yes, thank you very much. I have my flight leaving in about a couple of hours. I have 1 hour to get to the airport, so I'd better be going. And
Run.
Yeah, see you soon, and yeah, enjoy the weekend.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye bye.